this side of the House stands in the values of freedom and democracy. We believe that when a state allows individuals to form corporations, and that state allows individuals to make rules within those corporations, that the state should never intervene with the corporation's activity, provided that regulations and standards have been complied by these corporations. What we think, coming from the government side of the House, is a proposition that denies the ability of these corporations to manage their own wealth and to at least distribute their own wealth, provided that they fulfill all the standards and the criteria that government wants them to commit to. I'll respond to this debate in two levels. The first is, ultimately, what we believe from opening opposition is this stance. As long as corporations fulfill corporate social responsibility that is recommended by them and obliged by them by the state, we will still allow free market of the invisible hand to determine the compensation that these corporations will be able to give to their employees from the bottom to the top. We say no to the cap on wages, but yes to bare minimum wage. Okay, my responses to the Prime Minister. The first thing that she talked about is this idea of the ability to cushion losses or all of these things. We say, first, this is self-fixing. Because number one, most of the time, with these corporations overcompensate certain employees, and the business isn't really doing, these corporations will ultimately die anyway. So that's why the free market is there. The government is under no interest to say, I have to save these types of corporations from failing. What's the reason why we provide them the right to be able to comply with these standards and to create their own businesses if continuously the government intervenes? The second thing is that this idea of the need for the state to intervene. We say first, this is anti-free market because now you commission the state to intervene on corporate activity. You allow the state to define corporate roles, to define what the corporation should do. We think that this is unfair because firstly, corporations abide to many standards in the first place. They have to pass a lot of licensure, they have to pass a lot of things before they become a corporation. We think that that trade-off is enough for the state to be confident that whatever activity the corporation does, provided it is not under, a crime or anything else, the state has no right to intervene in these types of activities. After this. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, is this idea of what about the state's responsibility within these corporations? We say first that it's already existed. That's the reason why the state has the ability to license corporations to operate or not license them to operate. We think that's a good thing. Secondly, we also have corporate standards. I mean, not anybody can just form a corporation. We say that's already responsibility enough. Go, Vince.
Yes. Since those companies are in the verge of falling, the CEOs take these companies hostage by demanding even more salary, which hostages the company at the end.
Well, in some cases, we're not really going to defend these bad corporations. But what we say, Mr. Speaker, is that for some cases, there's a reason why corporations still allow to overcompensate the CEOs. Which will be a case in a while. The first thing I want to talk about, Mr. Speaker, is this idea of why they allow freedom of corporations to define their own system of incentives. We say first, the state is not the proper agent to determine market strategies. We will agree to recommendations provided by the state. The state may be able to say, probably this type of worker needs to have this type of wage. But what we think is that it is more important for us to address the corporation's demand and the ability of the corporations to allocate compensations for themselves. Why? First is that they have the freedom to freely motivate their own employees in whatever way possible. The state is not an agent to say that this is how you should motivate your agents. This is how you should motivate your employees. Because there's a difference between the interest of the state and the interest of the corporations. The state can always operate under a loss, Mr. Speaker. That's why it's easy for them to say, let's prioritize proletariat incentives as opposed to corporate incentives. But as corporations, you need to balance the ideas of profit and the ideas of corporate social responsibility. So in that case, the state is not the proper agent to determine the standards for those corporations. Secondly, is that we say there is already a balance between profit motivation and corporate social responsibility existing on the ground. How do corporations do that? First, on the context of redistribution of wealth, the state always taxes these corporations. meaning that whatever profit that the state may be able to get from these corporations is immediately distributed to a lot of people on the ground, which is a better thing. Secondly, is that the state also encourages corporations and even obliges them and recommends them to provide insurance for their own employees. That's why we say on the concept of wage, it's okay to have a bare minimum wage because in that context, we disallow corporations to abuse their employees. But in terms of like compensation for CEOs, it's not really under the level of the state to determine those standards for themselves. Corporations have autonomy, corporations have different goals beyond the state. That's why we give them that right. Go.
Ladies and gentlemen, to some extent they are in fact autonomous but never completely. When issues that directly affect the workers' welfare, this becomes state responsibility. That is why we have labor standards and minimum wage.
Yeah, that's why we allow labor unions to have, to form and lobby against these corporations. But you can never deny the ability of the corporations to set their own levels of compensation. So why do we think it's okay, to some extent, to overcompensate or to luxuriously compensate your employees and even CEOs? One, because we say these types of employees carry multiple burdens within themselves. Firstly, if you talk about CEOs, the reason why you have to motivate CEOs with large compensations is because anything that happens to the corporations themselves, Mr. Speaker, will be something that the CEOs will be held accountable to. All criminal accountability lands on the CEO's laps. All of the other things in terms of operation, in terms of rights within the employees, lands within those types of people. That's why we think it's reasonable for us to consider those things. In the end, Mr. Speaker, we've proven to you that in terms of like creating corporate social responsibility, it's good that the state has recommended standards. But it is never under the interest of the state to go beyond the free market and suggest and even impose wages, Mr. Speaker. Finally, we say that if you deny corporations the ability to freely motivate their employees, you also deny them the ability to profit, you deny them the ability more productive within those types of works. That's why we say it is anti-free market, it is against the free hand, it is anti-democratic, and we stand for the rights of those people.